airfare. Is there any validity to that?
Not at all.
Or time of day? Have you heard people say, oh, if you do it?
Historically, airfare tends to increase Fridays, like Thursdays and Fridays, and remain high for the weekend. And then sometimes Tuesday afternoons, it goes back down. Now, does that always happen every week? No. So I watch air all the time, and yeah, sometimes on a Tuesday evening or a Wednesday morning, all of a sudden something I'm watching drops. Great, but it doesn't happen all the time. People also think
that's
that.
what I've heard was Tuesdays. Do it Tuesday afternoon.
But again, it doesn't always happen, right? I've seen it happen, but it's not. Nothing is really.
In terms of when you book it or when you actually
when
fly?
You book it.
When you book it.
When you book it.
Like it sometimes drops on Tuesday afternoons.
When you fly.
When you fly, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are definitely cheaper than on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Meaning.
Well, that's the luxury about being retired too.
Right. Yeah.
Travel any day of the
Well,
week.
yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, you don't need to travel like July and August.
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of us do with kids too. So. But yeah, with air, it's really hit or miss. Some people think, oh, if I wait, it'll be better. The price would go down. But I actually often see the opposite. So air becomes available 11 months before you travel. And I find when I book air right when it becomes available, it's the least expensive.
I don't like the risk of waiting.
I don't either. I don't either. It's probably
all
the
of a sudden
CPA
it
in
could
me.
be a
It's probably the
jump
CPA
in
in me. Like, I'm
$200.
not a risk taker.
Yeah.
Not a risk taker. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm purchasing flights for my clients now, like $1,500 a person for air for Europe. Mm-hmm. My family and I are going to Europe in July 31st. We leave. I bought those tickets in November for $700, and that's a great deal for Europe. So I'm a firm believer that, especially for international travel, the earlier you plan, the better. I feel like it's supply and demand. When the airlines see a certain flight getting booked, they're like, oh, there's demand, so I'm going to bump it up.
Oh, sure.
And I've seen it. I've booked a family of 8, and all of a sudden, like 2 days later, I'm like, I'm curious about this flight. All of a sudden, it was like $300 more. So I've seen it.
If you book that far in advance, what do you think of travel insurance?
I always recommend travel insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, even if you're booking 3 months ahead, it doesn't matter when. After I have a trip already booked, then I work with an insurance company, so it's not, the insurance is not through me, it's through the insurance company, but I always prepare an insurance quote and send it to the client. And then if they purchase, then if they decide to purchase it, you have a policy with an insurance company.
For your own travel, do you always?
I have an annual plan. Yeah,
Okay.
I have an annual family plan.
I didn't even know they do that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
If you're going to travel on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was
then
going to say, how
more
many
cost
trips do you need to
effective.
take for that to
Yeah.
be cost effective?
I know, but it's so important, especially I feel like years ago it maybe wasn't as important, but these days there's just always so many delays. Like even if, of course something can happen to you as well, but just delays getting to your destination because of the flights or anything. Terrorism, anything can happen.
Terrorism now is something to think about.
Exactly. So it's so,
Or even when the computer
unfortunately.
glitches for the airline.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
it happens.
so.
And
It's really so important to have coverage. And I had a client who, her and her husband, they're retired, had a beautiful trip to Positano, Italy. It was a week, and they were spending like $12,000 on this trip. It was a really beautiful trip. She messed up her knee the day before the trip. But she had travel insurance. Now, at that point, everything is non-refundable. Well, air is always non-refundable, but even the hotel, like the day before, and she got every single penny back. So it's really, you never know. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. So, yeah, I was happy that, she got every penny back from that.
yeah, I know my in-laws, my father-in-law's mother passed away our father-in-law passed away right before their trip, like the week before, and they had insurance. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it covers, like
Yeah.
say, God forbid, my parents are ill or something and I can't go on a trip. Like, it'll cover for that as well. Not just if something happens to you, and the travelers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great. It's,
So basically, you can cancel the trip for whatever reason?
no, covered reasons. So,
Specific ones.
right. You can get canceled for any reason insurance, but I never recommend it. Number one, it's really expensive, and number two, you don't get 100% back. So if you just change your mind. it's not going to give you 100% back. But there are so many covered reasons. Anything from loss of a job, illness of like an immediate family member that you need to stay back for, and be with them. Obviously death. There's so many reasons, that if your flight's delayed, basically, unless the only thing you can't cancel for is if you change your mind, but it covers everything really. Any questions about long-term travel plans or travel in general, or anything at all that I can answer for you?
What's one place on everyone's bucket list to go? Australia? Joanne?
I want to run to Winnebago and drive across the United States.
Ah.
To see every weird thing.
That's what a lot of people have been, and I think the terrorist attacks play a part of it.
Among
People
other things, but that's the one
focusing
I
on
always
the
wanted to do.
states, it's, we know it's safe, we don't have to go far. And there's so many places in the states that we, to go to and visit, we don't think about.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Kimberly?
Interesting you say that because,
And river cruises. All the river cruises.
All the
Every single one.
2 years ago when my mom passed away, my dad decided that he wanted to continue to travel because the two of them have been on world cruises and they've been to practically every state and all different countries and Antarctica and really they were avid travelers. So he offered each of myself and my 3 siblings a trip to wherever we wanted to go. And he wanted to go in age order, so my older sister wanted to go to the Galapagos Islands, and she and my dad both have health issues, so the more that they checked it out, they realized it really wasn't for them. They ended up going to the one state my dad had not been to, Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
And it rained the whole time,
Oh,
and
no.
the weather was miserable, but they were there right before all the volcanic activity, so at least they were able to see different sites. But then my other sister chose Iceland,
Nice.
and my brother went to Scotland because that was one of the places. What my parents did when they retired is that they bought a flat and a castle in Scotland and then used that as their home base to travel all throughout. And my sisters and I had all gotten there at one point or another. My brother had never been able to visit, so he and my dad went and saw all the different places that
Oh, beautiful.
So I was actually the first one that actually went because as a teacher I have time off. So 2 summers ago I decided that, you know what, out of all those wonderful places that everybody keeps saying, Australia and Iceland, and I wanted to see the United States first. So we got, and on the way, visiting friends and relatives.
Wow.
So, and I, 10 weeks to do it. We got as far as Rocky Mountain, and my dad was ill, so we had to come back. So last summer he said, okay, he got all his medical issues taken care of. We're gonna do it again. And we had thought about flying out instead of doing all that driving, but we ended up deciding that it would be for all different reasons. So we got this time as far as getting together with Road Scholar.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
That was gonna go, cause I wanted to see the national parks.
Yeah.
And we got as far as the first one was Zion, and he became ill again, and we had to cancel that, and he did not have, he had travel insurance for that, but once you actually get onto the trip, start the trip, it didn't reimburse him at all.
Oh,
So,
that's not how mine works.
yeah.
Different count.
So I
Oh my
guess-
gosh, yeah.
So that's still
Wow.
on my list to go one of these days to finish, to start seeing, Arches and Canyonland and,
Sure.
Zion and
Yeah.
all those.
Yosemite. Have you been to Yosemite?
No,
Yeah,
Yosemite would be
beautiful.
fun. I've been to Joshua Tree, awesome,
Yeah.
I've been to, like I said, Rocky Mountain, I've been to, so on the way there though, we did some really cool things that I hadn't even thought of. That because my mom and dad had been all over the place, like the Petrified Forest. And I was just like, oh yeah, I learned about that as a kid.
Yeah.
And Crater, there's this, I'm not even sure if that's the actual name, it's not, Meteor Crater, that's what it is.
In
And-
Arizona.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I never thought to go there, and it was one of the best days ever, so lots of, and it was so fun because in the morning we'd wake up and the day was ours,
Yeah.
So one day we thought we were going to get to the Badlands, but on the way we saw this deserted town, and we spent the whole day just exploring,
Oh,
going,
that's great.
flocks of birds coming out of the old jail that, was all, windows were all out.
So at least
and
you got to
everything.
enjoy before he became
Yes,
ill.
so we definitely have done fun things,
Mhm.
but I still want to get to those national parks.
You will.
Anything else? Did you have a question before? No? You good?
Oh,
Yeah, we got
I had so you do vacations in the US also?
Not
No,
really.
not really, except for the West Coast, like California national parks. I do a lot because that's usually what people, want
Yeah,
to
when
see,
you
and
go
they're.
up that, what highway is that, the Pacific?
Oh yeah,
Pacific
Pacific
Coast?
Coast, yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, so so here's the thing, a lot of people ask me like, well, how do you compete with the internet, right? And I'm like, well, again, like if you just want to go to Miami for a long weekend, you can go on Expedia and do that. You don't need me for that, right? That's what Expedia's for. But if you want to go to the West Coast for 2 weeks and do California and national parks and all that, or if you want to go to Europe, or if you want to go to Asia, or Central America. So again, that's why most of the U.S. like people will just take little trips. Except I feel like for the West Coast, everyone takes like these big, trips and that they need help with because there's a lot of stops and a lot of different things to do. So yeah.
For a 5-year plan, do you have any sort of, I know it would be a guess, but like averages for cost or high, like
So it's hard to give you an annual cost without knowing your interests, right?
Right.
Because if you want to take your family on vacation, a family of 10 is going to be very different than just you traveling or you traveling with a partner, or taking a world cruise versus a river cruise, right? So it could be, I mean, anywhere. From
That's like when people ask me, can I retire?
Yeah.
Without knowing
Yeah.
the components. I'm like, I don't really know how much you're going to spend. Or
right.
what your lifestyle's going to be.
That's
so
the
narrowing
thing.
that
So
down.
there's
Retire, but what's their life gonna look like?
and the other thing to remember is that you could travel in so many different ways, right? So I like to give this example because it just happened last year, and it makes people realize like, oh, so I had a family go to Italy for 10 nights and another family go to Italy for 10 nights. One was a family of 3, one was a family of 4. Very similar destinations in Italy. One spent $24,000 and one spent $52,000. And you're like, well, why? Well, because one stayed in like 4-star properties and they had some nice experiences, but nothing like over the top. The other family, they wanted a yacht in the Amalfi Coast for a day. They wanted only the top 5-star properties in Italy. So, you know what I mean? So like you could see there how you can travel in so many different ways. So it's really hard to like throw a number for a trip without knowing anything about you, what you like, what you don't like, what your hobbies are.
Can you back into a trip? Like, I have $5,000 to spend. This is where I want to go. Can you kind of back in? All right, it's going to be 5 days, not 10 days. It's going to be...
So like I have an idea of how much trips are if you're telling me like, if I, realize from you like, okay, you want more of like a 4-star trip, some nice experiences, but nothing, too crazy. Or if you tell me like, no, I really want 5-star properties and, I travel real luxury. So yeah, I can kind of have an idea of if you want to go 10 nights to Italy, this is how much, just based on planning trips, right? You kind of have an idea. Because when clients call me, we need to before I start planning a trip, I always talk budget and make sure that what they're thinking, is going to cost them that is in line with what it will cost them. But yeah, so there's just so many ways to travel. And then, how many things you want to do. Like I had a family who they loved biking. And they were going to spend a day in Tuscany, so we did a bike tour for them in Tuscany. So the 4 of them were just biking through vineyards and had lunch at a vineyard. And so again, like everything is custom.
Yeah. That's the benefit of working with someone like you, because you know all those different types of excursions.
Right.
I wouldn't even know to look for
Right.
a bike thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like depending on what you love to
Right.
do, like you should be doing that while you travel. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah.
No, you haven't actually experienced all of those tours that you might book your clients on, right?
So the way that I mean
Like, how do
most
you
countries,
know
most
that
of the
they're
countries
lucky?
that I plan trips for, I've traveled, right? Most, not every single, little town, or, obviously that's impossible for the entire world. But what I do is I have partners in every country. So I have a travel supplier partner in Italy, one in Greece, one in Croatia,